Hi everybody, welcome back to the Gallowgateshots, the YouTube channel. We're back with another match preview. I'm Scott, I'm your host for this one. I'm joined today by Matthew and Andy. Matthew, how are you this evening?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Yeah, how about you? Feeling okay?
Yeah, we're getting back to asking how people are after Chris is doing it his own way last week. We'll take it back to my format, I think. Andy, thanks for joining the match previews. How are you this evening?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. All the better for talking to you too.
Excellent. So we're going to be doing a match preview on the Fulham game this weekend. But before we get into all that, I do just need to let you know that the Gallowgateshots match preview is brought to you by Magpin. Magpin is the go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamel pin badges of Newcastle players, legends, and retro kits. They're also doing those nice little postcards for every game every month. For more information on Magpin, you can visit their website at magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. Okay, so on Saturday, Newcastle will travel down to the capital city where we will play Fulham at Craven Cottage. Fulham aren't doing too badly this season. They seem to be the surprise package of the three promoted sides, currently sitting in sixth position on 11 points. Matthew, we'll come to you first. Have they been a surprise to you, or were you expecting that based on their good performances last season in the Championship?
Well, I mean, they always seem to do well in the Championship, don't they? I think Marco Silva's got them playing some good football, made some fairly shrewd signings, especially Andres Pereira. I think I'm surprised to see them doing so well because normally when they come up to our level, they're a bit of a whipping boy, aren't they? But they have held their own, especially at home. And at the start of the season, I'd be looking at this fixture thinking it might have been an easy 3 points, but the way we are and the way they are at the moment, it seems like it might be a different question altogether.
Yeah, they have indeed. So they're currently actually sitting in 11th with 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. They've scored 12, but they have also conceded 11. So they do seem to leak a few goals as well. Andy, mate, does that give you a bit of confidence that maybe we could snatch a few goals in this one? And given how we're notoriously this season quite hard to score against, does that give you hope for this fixture?
It does, yeah. I had a quick look before we came on and I saw that they'd scored in every goal bar one. The only one they hadn't scored in was Wolves, which no one scores against them because they're the most boring team in the league. But I think Fulham they're probably the only team that's come up that's done everything right. They've come up, they've kept the core players, but also improved sensibly. Obviously, Mitrovic is the key guy, and I'm sure we'll talk about him. Pereira is obviously the fantasy football dream, but they've kept that core there and they've built on it, whereas the other two have obviously either bought 25 players or bought no one. They're a good side. They've done things right. They're banana skin for everyone, but we're getting to that point in the season where you can't really just call them a banana skin anymore. They are genuinely just a good team. Should hopefully be goals either way.
Yeah, you mentioned the signings. So they spent around 61 million in the summer, but they did recuperate about 20 million of that. So it's a net spend of around 40.5 million. It kind of adds up from there. Like you said, brought in Pereira. They've also brought in Diop and Babu, who's a previous Newcastle player, Vincinius. They've re-signed a couple of loanees as well in James and Duffy. It seems to be a good mix of Premier League experience and kind of, players coming in from other leagues. They haven't done what they did last time when they seemed to spend, I think it was 100 odd million on crazy players from, with no Premier League experience or very little Premier League experience. And it just didn't work. But like I say, Andy, they seem to have gelled quite quickly. And they seem to be getting the results where it matters. They obviously started with was it a 2-2 or a 3-3?
2-2
draw,
against
2-2, wasn't it, against Liverpool?
2-2 against Liverpool.
Yeah, which was, when you saw that, you thought, are Liverpool having a stinker or a Fulham having a good game? And it turns out they've kept their form up. I mean, they've only lost against Arsenal and Tottenham. So, you could probably argue their games you'd expect them to lose. And then the other games, I think they've beat Brighton, Brentford and Forest. So, again, their league position could actually be quite flattering to them because those three teams, maybe Brighton is the only one that you would say they maybe shouldn't win, but they'll know Brentford from the Championship. They'll know Forest from the Championship. So Matthew, do you think maybe we're looking at Fulham and, obviously they are playing well, but their league position maybe doesn't represent the fixtures that they've had in terms of who they've played?
Possibly, yeah. I think I agree that obviously getting beat by Tottenham and Arsenal, you would expect that at the start of the season. You look at our fixtures and the way we've performed, you might say that we've underperformed. We are at that point in the season where we're 7 games in now, seven games in, and you kind of look like Andy says that there is no room for banana skins anymore. Teams normally start to find their place in the league around about this time, unless there's like a late surge like what we did, performing miracles at the back end of last season. But you do normally find the teams at the top will stay near the top at this stage now, once they start to kind of find their form. So yeah, you've got to think that at some point Fulham are going to have a slight drop off, because I can't see them finishing. I mean, I said I can't see we losing not picking up 3 points against Bournemouth last time. I can't see Fulham dropping off to a degree where they finish in the relegation zone, but I can't see them staying where they are either. It's going to be an interesting one to see where that actually goes for them, because I would be very, very shocked if they do finish in that top 8. But we'll see.
We will. Like I said, it's a 3:00 kickoff at the weekend. There's been a few controversial happenings in the run up to this one. Obviously, there's the rail strikes where, I think fans are going to find it difficult to get down there, especially at the weekend. But also there was the story, I think, that broke over the weekend just gone, that the away allocation has been slightly oversold, and whether that's an admin error or what's happened there, it's a bit of a shame. But given the controversy that's happened already, this has all the markings of a 0-0 draw, right, Andy?
Well, it's hard to predict anything this year, really, isn't it? It's been so
really
strange. The past few seasons have all been a bit crazy, just obviously with COVID, and then even last week against Bournemouth, it was very sort of dour atmosphere with, obviously there was no flags because of the Queen minute silence, things like that. So that almost felt like a friendly, pre-season friendly. It was very sort of strange. And I guess we're two sort of very unpredictable teams. And I know we were obviously on about the league table there. I think it was Ferguson who said no point looking at the league until Christmas, but you can't sort of help it this year because we're all so excited about where we're going to go. We're always looking at the table, always looking who's around us, who we're competing with. And I guess Fulham will just be in dreamland thinking, it's Europa League. So I think it's two teams that will be still confident. We don't know what's going on with Mitrovic. I saw that he was pictured with some bandage or ice on his foot. And he's obviously so key to them. So if he's not there, we're obviously more likely to keep a clean sheet. But I think on the bets for both teams to score, we're probably going to be some short odds on that for this game as opposed to some of the others. I guess it's going to depend on what lineups the teams can put out.
Yeah, so you mentioned, Mitrovic, and we'll come to him just a minute. Obviously, Fulham, they tend to play with a 4-2-3-1 formation this season, which kind of matches us. So would you expect Marco Silva to change that at all because of the way we play? Or do you think, Matthew, that he'll stick to his guns and it'll be a nice open game where, both teams are going to probably prefer to play on the counter-attack, but, are also quite comfortable with the ball if needs be?
I think you look at our recent performances, you'll see that they're at home, unbeaten so far at home. He's got to fancy his chances. I think he'll stick to his guns. And I think they'll probably try and dictate the tempo. It'll be a really interesting game because, like you say, we're both similar styles. But, like you say, it's just going to be a case of seeing who can actually keep hold of the ball. Mitrovic, if he plays, we've seen the way he likes to play, where he likes to try and pest our defenders. And the way our defence is at the moment, a little bit maybe lacking confidence. I would worry that they're going to be a little bit worried about making a mistake. So it's one to watch. I think Mitrovic scored a goal recently where he nicked it. Was it against Arsenal where he nicked it off the defender and had a one-on-one? Yeah. So it's that sort of thing that we need to really be kind of looking out for. We do like to play it out from the back. So you just know Mitrovic is going to be running around trying to chase that ball, dying to get a goal because he's going to be desperate, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He absolutely is. We'll move on to Mitrovic now. Obviously, a previous Newcastle player who I think stole a little piece of everybody's hearts when he came here, and even when he left, he was. I I always like to think he was one of the ones that got away. I think he had a bit of a rough doing over by Rafa. I know Rafa maybe didn't trust that he could not get sent off in games, and he maybe let him down in a few games. But towards the end of Mitrovic's Newcastle career, I feel like he got a bit of a hard doing by the management. He wasn't given the chances he should have done. But that's in the past. Obviously, he's now a Fulham player, and he's not done bad at Fulham. Last season, smashing that championship season goal record with, was it 43 goals, I think, that he managed to get on the last day, which I remember when we were in the championship, we all thought Dwight Gale was going to do it, but unfortunately got injured. And I think Ivan Toney was another ex-Newcastle player who was up there with those numbers, but he didn't quite make it. And then Mitrovic was just like, yep, I'll do it. Here we go, 43 goals. And he has also got 6 goals this season, so he is a threat. One thing I will say on that, though, he's the top goal scorer by a country mile for Fulham. There's only another, I think it was Paulina or Pereira, maybe it's with 2, and then a few with 1 goal here or there. So if he is unfit, and he, like you say, he has been pictured with bandages on his legs and ice on his legs, maybe Fulham, maybe don't have another alternative or a plan B for that. Andy, I'll come to you on this one for Mitrovic. Were you a fan when he played for us, and also, are you still a fan? And is he a worry for you for starting at the weekend?
Well, I won't be his fan on Saturday, but I absolutely loved him when he was here. I think especially that championship year, I think we all saw him and Gale as being almost the dream strike partnership, and we always thought those two together would just tear teams apart, but it didn't happen for whatever reason. But I think there's obviously been quite a lot of Ivan Toney conversations recently. I think we forget that players do get better when they go to other clubs and get to thrive. And yeah, we did rate him. He was good, but he arguably is a much better player at Fulham than he ever was at Newcastle. Whether that's because of opportunities or whatever, we don't know. But yeah, obviously, you can only read about how he is now, and he's brilliant. He's obviously got an all-around game. He can head. Everyone knows how physical he is and how much of a Raji he is, but he can finish. He's got technical ability. He holds the play up well, but he also drops deep and does the Harry Kane, almost number 10 of spreading the play as well. He's just absolutely key to everything they do. And I think the fact that no one really knows who their second striker is says a lot about how important he is. I would presume it's Bobby Reid who would play up front for them, but being completely naive, they probably do have a striker on the bench who would come up if he's not available. But yeah, he's obviously the key man. And I think thinking of the Newcastle side, we are going to probably have to play Botman in this game because he is our best defender on his day, and we need someone who can just mark him out the game and boss him.
Absolutely. And you mentioned there about Mitrovic's physicality and being a bit of a Raji. I haven't used that word for a while. I don't live in Newcastle anymore, so the word Raji is a nice throwback to my time back then. But I seem to remember it was the first game Mitrovic played for us. I think it was against Southampton when he came on, and the first thing he did was just clatter one of the Southampton players. And I remember I was in the ground and I looked at my mate I was there with. I was just like, he's going to be fun this season if that's how he starts his career in the Premiership. And it was a fun season of some pretty wild tackles and one or two cards that maybe he shouldn't have got. Matt, do you think that if we play our game correctly and maybe he's put the right personnel in defence and maybe he's in defensive midfield, could we maybe get under Mitrovic's skin and maybe he's play that to our advantage and maybe he's work towards him getting a card? And it's not the nice thing to do, but if a player's got a hot head, is it an advantage you should play to?
I think it's something you could want to exploit, but I kind of think his days of being like that are behind him. I think he's matured quite a bit. You forget when he was at us, he was only 21, so he was a bit of a hothead, moving to a new country. I think he just had that hot streak in him. I think he's been away now. He's kind of matured. He's settled. I think we would be wise to give it a go. Obviously, stick Botman on him, try and match him for height and strength, and hope that Botman can handle him and hopefully give him a little bit of a wind-up as well. However, I think if we were at home, I think with the crowd on our side, I think we could potentially give him a bit of a hard time. I just think at home, he's going to be a bit more calmer, a bit more level-headed, and I think he'll fancy himself against us. I do. However, I'm still confident myself that we'll be able to handle him and do a job on him without trying to get him a dirty yellow card.
I think you can draw a bit of a comparison with Shelvey and Mitrovic. in terms of Shelvey still got this reputation of being an absolute idiot who gets sent off all the time, but doesn't really tend to do it that much anymore. I know he still has the odd moment, but I think Mitrovic, yeah, going back to what I said before, he's improved technically, but I think mentally he's much better as well. So yeah, worth a go. Blow in his ear a little bit, try and wind him up, but don't make it the game plan, I think.
Absolutely not. And we'll come to the Newcastle lineups in just a minute. But before we get to that, I do want to touch on Newcastle a little bit. Because, you know, as a match preview, we like to talk about both sides, and we wouldn't be a Newcastle fan channel if we weren't talking about Newcastle United. I'm going to touch on a bit of a sour point at the moment, and that is injuries. Our injury list seems to be ever growing, and there seems to be players dropping like flies left, right, and centre. I'm just going to rattle through the list of players who are still injured or classed as injured, even though there may be one or two who are set to return this week. So we've got Carl Darlow, John Joe Shelvey, Anderson, Bruno, Wilson, St. Maximum, Isak, Wood, and Kraft. Now, that list, reading that out, that is, I would say, 90% of those players are starting 11 week in, week out. Maybe it's a bit less, but you know, you're looking at Bruno, Wilson, Saint, Isak. You could argue Kraft, and there's an argument for Anderson as well there. And you've got Wood and Darlow, who are pretty much second choice when, you know, the respective keepers are out. We have had some good news this week from Craig Hope that Wilson and Bruno should be fit and St. Maximum could possibly make the bench. So that makes things a bit better. But Andy, we'll stick with you on this one. Are injuries becoming a bit of a concern in terms of the fact of the nature of the injuries and what type of injuries we're getting, but also just the numbers of injuries that we're getting?
Yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it? And obviously, we know that the starting 11 is pretty good this year. But there's always that question mark about the bench. You know, second choice, you go to Kraft, you go to whoever. So yeah, it is a worry. It was obviously a worry under Bruce as well, but I think that was lack of training and match sharpness and fitness. I guess we don't, until we really know what's causing it. At the minute, it just seems like it's bad luck. If it becomes a recurring problem under Howe, there's going to have to be question marks asked, because obviously we are playing quite intense football. And we know it's going to be a hectic schedule this year with the World Cup. They're going to be playing 3 games a week at some point this season. I think it could be to do with the facilities, because we know that our facilities are still terrible. We don't really have a sports science department. We don't have this, that, and the other. So yeah, it is an issue. We just need to hope that the players who arguably shouldn't be near the starting 11 anymore, like my friend Murphy, who, if you know me, you'll know how much I really rate him. We're kind of relying on those players to really step up and carry the can, when my theory on football is always you're only as good as your worst player. So you can have Bruno on the pitch, but then if you then relying on Murphy to whip a ball in for someone, you're kind of struggling. So it is an issue. We obviously need to work on it, but we know that Eddie and his staff are really good, and they're not going to just be ignoring it. They know they need to look at it.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of theories going around on whether it's, you know, just the sheer number of games or the shorter you know, kind of time in between games that some players have. I mean, it hasn't been that bad up to now, and there's been a few rests, obviously, with the West Ham game getting postponed because of what happened, and then we've just had an international break. Incidentally, we got 2 players injured while on international duty, so that's a bit of a shame. You know, some of the theories are that maybe they're doing too much in training, or they're pressing too hard, and the way that we're playing now, like you mentioned with Eddie Howe, is just taking toll on these players, and it's starting to show. Matt, you're the FPL expert in the Gallowgateshots team, and I'm going to call you the FPL expert because you know more than we do. Is this a common thing across other teams in the Premiership? Are you seeing a lot of injuries from a lot of key players?
Yeah, you're calling us an expert because of my experience of playing the game, not because of my actual position this year. We'll not mention it. Doing dreadfully. But
no, we should mention it. We should mention it. Where are you in the Gallowgateshots league?
Oh, do you know what, mate? It's something like 200 and something. I'm sure. Like, I'm not
doing
well.
Stop looking.
Yeah, I've stopped looking at that one. I know I'm about 3 millionth overall at the minute. Like, it's absolute
the best
nightmare.
of us, don't worry.
Yeah, but hey ho, there's plenty of time to recover. Plenty of time. But yeah. So the question was injuries, wasn't it? So
yeah. For other clubs.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's because I follow quite a lot of, like, I get Twitter alerts for quite a lot of like, it's called FPL status. So you find out when certain players get flagged because of injuries. And there's been loads. It's been like it's a tale as old as time with international breaks, because you always see injuries. Sometimes they're phantom injuries as well. Like you sometimes get the case where players have went to international duty, but they've faked an injury almost to try and come back earlier, so they're fit for Ryan Giggs. I'm sure Trent's done it before. That, like, you name it, there's players who have played the game and said they've got a sore foot and ended up going back because they've got bigger fish to fry at their clubs. I think a lot of clubs are struggling because of the amount of fixtures. I know Everton have been hit quite badly. I think they lost Nathan Patterson to a knee injury this week. So it's happening across the board. Like, influential players at certain clubs are coming back with like scrapes and knocks, and it's just one of those things that we've always had to deal with. Granted, I do think it's happening to us a little bit more. I don't think I've ever known a period recently where we've had so many injuries to influential players that weren't Wilson and St. Maximin. I mean, that might be because we've got more influential players now, who knows? But I don't think it's got anything to do with what Howe's doing. You look at teams like people have been pressing for years and relying on work rate for years, and they've managed to keep a fairly continued squad and team. Like, you look at Leicester winning the league, they were so successful because they didn't have many injuries that year, and they were the first team to really press from the front. So yeah, I don't see it being an issue for us going forward long term. I just think it's something like a bad spell in terms of injuries, I think.
Well, we'll move on to our predicted lineups. I think we're probably all in agreement about the goalkeeper, even though, questions and eyebrows have been raised over his previous performance for England. But Nick Pope has been solid as a rock for us, and I think he'll continue to do that. One question I did have on Pope, and I'll ask this to you, Andy. Obviously, we've seen this sometimes with other players like Dubravka, where they've maybe made a mistake at national level and it has affected them for a couple of games afterwards. Do you fear that's going to happen with Pope, or do you think he's just going to brush it off as a lesson learned, and given the defence he was playing with, maybe scratch that one off as just a night to forget and move on?
Yeah, I think so. I forgot about the Dubravka one until I saw it on Twitter the other day when he just punched it in his own goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so bad that he decided to leave the club. But yeah, I think Pope's a professional. He's obviously had to play in that Burnley team for God knows how long, so I'm sure he's used to picking the ball out of the back of his net. Yeah, it was a rubbish mistake, but it was a dead rubber game. No one really cared. I think it was unfortunate that we obviously had all the hype of scoring 3 unanswered goals, and then obviously Pope just handed the game back to them. But he's a professional. He'll have time to come back and reflect, and I think we have coaching staff and a good squad dynamic that'll get behind him, and he'll have his head picked up. So I can't see that being an issue.
Yeah, so we're probably all in agreement that Pope will stay in goal. I mean, if Darlow's out, we do have the new signing. I can never pronounce his name. It's Crafts.
Karius,
yeah. That's it. So, yeah, sorry. And obviously he is quite famous for making a couple of mistakes as well. So maybe it's best of both, and we'll stick with Pope. But we're looking at a back four, and I think, again, the two wing backs, or whatever you want to call them these days, pick themselves, and Trippier and Target if they're fit. But there's an argument for centre backs in this game, I think, and I've seen a lot of people say maybe we should be dropping Fabian Schär and playing Burn and Botman for this one, just because of the physicality of Mitrovic and some of the other players that are Fulham. Do you agree with that, Matt?
I think, honestly, who knows who we're going to play in at centre back. I'm not even going to try and guess, but you just want to play who you think is going to be your strongest centre back pairing. Whether that be your two tallest players against somebody who's good in the air, then that makes total sense. I think Burns a lot better at tracking the game and reacting to danger than what Schär is. I think Schär has got a little bit of a mistake in him. I don't think nothing major, but sometimes he's just maybe found out a little bit out of position. On the ball, he's just far better than most. However, Burn and Botman can pass the ball very well as well. It would be interesting because there's this formation myth where you can't play two left-footed centre-backs. which I've never understood. Like the world just ends if you play two left-footed centre backs together, apparently. So it'll be interesting to see if Howe actually goes for that and whether they actually do cement themselves. And maybe we can start a new fancy trend of left-footed centre backs starting together.
Let's do it. There is obviously also the argument of with Fabian Schär that he also has a tendency of seeing red, and making a few silly fouls, and maybe as if Mitrovic can flip what we were talking about before about a game plan on us and rile Schär up. Maybe he can work that to his advantage and get a red card for Schär. So we'll see what happens. Like I say, we're not actually picking the side, of course, but we're just talking about who we think will go in. Now, the midfield, Bruno is obviously the biggest doubt at the moment. Craig Hope has given us a little bit of hope in that, he said that he should be fine. It seems like he wanted to stay with the Brazil squad and play with them, and he seemed to be okay at Disneyland Paris this week. And not holding it against him, if I was in Paris, I'd go to Disneyland as well. I want to see that new Marvel Expo just as much as anybody else. But do you think Bruno starts, Andy, or do you think it's one of those ones where Howe maybe would rest him on the bench and bring him on if he's absolutely needed?
Well, he's obviously had some Disney magic on his knee, hasn't he, to get back so quick. But I don't know. Like, it's always hard to tell because managers never want to give anything away, which, as Matt will know, from an FPL point of view, is a disaster because you're always trying to work out who's actually injured or whether the managers are just BSing completely. So, obviously, if he's fit, he needs to play. I don't like that we're having to play him in the deeper role, but Howe obviously feels like it's too important a position just to stick Longstaff in. He obviously doesn't really trust him enough to keep the ball. But if he's fit, he has to play. We need a win. It might be a risk, but at the end of the day, you need to win games still. I'd rather play him and win and he misses the next game than rest him, we lose, and then we're relying on him to win the next game after, if that makes sense. So, yeah, he's our best player by miles. He's one of the best midfielders in the league, in my opinion. He's got to play if he's fit, even if he only gets 60 minutes.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that Hope said was that Shelvey is progressing well. He's nowhere near ready for this game, but he's ahead of his schedule. So, the sooner we can get Shelvey back and fire on cylinders to fill in that deep role and push Bruno further up, the better. When it comes to further up in midfield, obviously you've got Joe Linton, who I think picks himself week in, week out. But there is a question mark over Joe Willock recently and his performances of late. He seems to only like to perform after January. It's been 2 seasons now where he's done well for us in the second half of the season. Is there an argument to drop Willock, Matt? And if so, who do you pick instead?
I mean, he's got a bit of Jose Perez syndrome, hasn't he? Like, just wants to turn up near the back end of the season to save one. I don't think I'd drop him. I think he's, like, underlying stat-wise, he can carry the ball quite well. He can bring us forward and get us further up the pitch. Arguably, that's not as needed as what it might have been previously, like a few seasons ago, because we've now got Trippier and Bruno, who can play, and obviously Botman as well, who can play a long pass up the pitch. But you sometimes just need those sort of players who can carry the ball well and bring us further up. But yeah, I would probably want some more attacking returns from Willett to justify him keeping a place, especially with the squad getting stronger, hopefully more so in January. You'd like to think he'd be trying to cement a place and show, like he did when Bruno arrived, when we had that spell where Shelvey, Willock, and who was the other one? Joe Linton. We're just playing out of this world. It was the 3 Joes,
wasn't it?
It was the 3 Joes, just trying to keep them out of the team.
Pokemon evolution of Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like, it's you want Joe Willock to try and kind of grab the bull by the horns and say, look, I don't want to come out of this team. But at the minute, that's leaving a little bit to be answered, really.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like Willock's been exceptionally bad. He just hasn't been exceptionally good. It's kind of a mediocre performances week in, week out, which I think we're not expecting from him. Is there an argument, Andy, that if St. Maximum's fit, and obviously Fraser's had a pretty good, decent couple of games against Scotland, we played those two on the wings and maybe drop Mickey Almer on into Willock's position and have him playing in that role?
Yeah, I think he put Mickey in there when he first came, Howe, didn't he? Because I think he just wanted water carriers who had the stamina to just do all the running. Because I think Willock and Joe Linton, even though they don't seem it on the face of it, they are quite similar players in terms of they're good at breaking it up. They're both amazing athletes and they run with the ball. And I guess Mickey does that role just as well. I know the big question mark on Miggy is obviously the end product. He gets in unbelievable positions, and then tries to cut it on his left foot, even if he's on the goal line. So yeah, I think I wouldn't mind seeing Miggy in that role again. I think he would do it quite well, and I think he's a bit more technical, maybe something a bit different, because we looked very flat against Bournemouth. But going back to the forward line, yeah, Maximin's obviously don't need much analysis on that. He's just mint, isn't he? We know what he's going to do. Fraser's been really good. I don't mind Fraser. I think when the game gets a bit bigger, he hides a bit. But I think when we're playing quite well and he gets a lot of the ball, I think he's a good player, and he's obviously got that connection with Wilson. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a change if he's in good form. I guess he might be a bit leggy from playing Ukraine twice at neutral venues, but yeah, it'd be good to see it either way. We've got options, haven't we?
We do, and it's something that we haven't had that much in the past, and something that we don't actually have if you look at our striker at the moment, because if you look at the injury list and you look at what has been reported, Wilson is our only fit striker, so I think we have to kind of pick him, but I don't think you give him a full 90 if it's his first game back after a pretty bad injury. What are your thoughts on starting Wilson, or how many minutes Wilson will get at the weekend if he does start, Matt?
I don't think he's the only option. I know I don't really like it too much. Brings back some bad memories, but we have got Joe Linton who can play forward, and I'm sure he got a goal last time he did it as well. Did he not?
I think it was against Norwich, wasn't he? Got a couple of goals.
Norwich, he got a brace, didn't he? So he has got it in him, and especially if he's got better players supplying him, I think that there is an option there to play Joe Linton from the start, but then have Wilson maybe have 30 minutes just to get some match fitness up. I think that's an option that Howe could take. But if Wilson is adamant he wants to play, you might see an opportunity with Isak being out to try and kind of make a claim to having that starting striker role, and might relish the chance. Hopefully not at the detriment of his own fitness, because having Callum Wilson as your only fit striker is a bit of a catastrophe waiting to happen, isn't it?
It's a bit of a tightrope to walk. Yeah, it's a shame, because he's like I say, on his day, he's probably one of the best strikers in the country in terms of the England squad and in terms of the league. To be fair, he's probably one of the best finishers that we've seen in a long time. But his legs are made of glass, it would appear. Andy, what are your thoughts on the Wilson situation, and what do you think we should be doing at the weekend?
I completely agree. I don't know if any of you listened to Wilson and Antonio's podcast that they do together, but Wilson's effectively admitted that he makes out he's less injured than he is because he's so desperate to play all the time. So I think he can. I mean, obviously, I don't know because I'm not in the dressing room, but I think he can be his own worst enemy as well, because he's very mentally strong and he really does want to get out there and play, and he doesn't hide away. I think he's the sort of person who would say to Howe, yeah, I'm 100%, I'm absolutely fine. And then he'll go out, the pace of the game will be too quick and he might not be 100%. I think it was a Man City game, he admitted that he wasn't 100% and he probably shouldn't have played. Scored his goal and then was just injured for the entire game, effectively. So, but like you say, if he is the only fit striker, you've got to give him 60 minutes. Howe's either got to just start him and trust him that he is fine, and trust his medical staff that he's fine, or he waits, sees what the pace of the game is like and thinks, right, it's not a risk, I can put him on. Obviously, the ideal situation is we don't need to play him and we win without him. But as we've said, and we all know because we're not daft, he's so key to the team. He's probably more important than Isak, even though Isak is arguably going to be a better player in the future, and probably is when he's on it. But in terms of Wilson's dynamic with the team and how he's fit in, he's just crucial, isn't he?
He absolutely is, and he has hope, and he is fully fit, or as close to it as he possibly can be. I don't think Eddie Howe is the type of manager who would maybe entertain players coming back from an injury. At least, if they're playing week in, week out anyway, then that's a different story. But if you're coming back, I don't think he's going to risk it himself. We'll move on to predictions. I'll stick with you, Andy. Your score predictions for the weekend.
I don't like doing predictions because then people clip it back, don't they, and show how stupid you are. I'll go for. I think we'll be all right. I think international break came in a good time for us. If Mitrovic plays, it'll be both teams to score. I'm going to say we come from behind to win 2-1, and there'll be limbs in the away end.
Matt, your prediction?
Right, so I'm desperate to get another win on the board because we need one, don't we? so I might be a little bit biased. I'm going to go with 2-0. I think we'll keep them out at home, something that nobody's done yet. Hopefully, Wilson gets one, and Joe Linton. I think Joe Linton will start, get an early goal. Wilson off the bench to seal it.
Okay,
Mitrovic
get your
on
bet
goal.
builders in on those ones, ladies and gentlemen. Again, not gambling advice. Yeah, I think with Fulham, like I said, I think we've probably got enough to see them off, but they do have a good squad, but they are prone to leak a few goals. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. I think it'll be Wilson. I think you'll hit the ground running if he is back and starting. So yeah, I'll go for 1-0. I think it'll come late on, but it'll be 1-0. It's going to be a horrible watch if that's the case. And I do apologize in advance if that is how it happens, but I'm not making the games happen. I'm just making a prediction. Right. I think that's everything ticked off our list. Thanks very much, Matt. Thanks, Andy, for joining us this evening. It's been a good one. I've really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to getting back into a rhythm of Premier League football, although even though I think it ends again in the middle of November. So, well, at the beginning of November for the World Cup. So we'll enjoy it while it lasts. We'll be back next week with another match prediction. It's the Brentford game, if I remember rightly, at home. So we're back at St. James's Park for a 3 p.m. Saturday kickoff for that one. So join us next week for that one. If you like this content and you like other content like this, please consider becoming a subscriber of the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel. We're so close to 9,000 subscribers now. I think we're 60 off or something like that. So if you like this, hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, hit the like button and hit the little thumbs up or thumbs down. It just helps feed the YouTube algorithm gods and help them deliver this video to other like-minded people like yourselves. If you want to go one step further and be extra nice, you can also become a member. It's $2.99 a month. Gets you early access to a ton of videos and access to the Telegram group. But that's it for this week. Matt, thanks very much for joining us.
No problem. I'm glad I was here. Thanks very much.
You've got an FPL video as well coming this week, I believe.
Yeah, I think Daniel's on his wild card. So we're going to have a little discussion about that. Not talk too much about how we're doing, but more so about trying to point people in the right direction because we're nice like that.
Absolutely. And I think as well as an FPL show, we've also, Matty's recorded a Beyond the Lines with a Fulham fan. So if you want to see what the other supporters feel about Newcastle, go and check that out. That should be going up around the same time as this video. Andy, thanks very much for joining us this week. You're welcome back whenever you like, mate.
No problem. And just going back to the FPL thing, I burned my wild card like 4 weeks ago, so don't worry.
Same, mate. Same.
I love the chaos.
I did mine last week and brought in Isak, and he got a goal, and then he's injured. So I'm thinking Tony or Solanke is going to be an option to replace him with, or maybe I'll just bench him and see how bad he is in injury. Anyways, that's for another show for another time. Thanks very much, everybody, for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.